The message arrived on a cold winter morning when the sun had barely risen over the city of New Geneva. Daniel Harris stood at the window of his office watching the snow fall softly on the buildings below. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too many difficult negotiations. For 20 years, he had served as Earth's chief ambassador, handling disputes between colonies and managing the delicate politics of human expansion into space. But this message was different from anything he had ever received. The holographic display on his desk flickered to life, showing strange symbols that his computer struggled to translate. After a moment, the words became clear, and Daniel felt his heart grow cold as he read them. The Galactic Council, a group of 12 alien species that had ruled the known galaxy for over 40,000 years, had finally decided to acknowledge that humanity existed. They were not sending a friendly greeting. They were sending a demand. Daniel read the message 3 times to make sure he understood it correctly. The council wanted human representatives to come to their station in neutral space. They wanted to discuss the terms of humanity's future. The message made it very clear that refusing to attend was not an option. He picked up his communication device and called Catherine Morrison, his most trusted advisor. She arrived at his office within the hour, her dark hair still wet from the snow outside. Catherine was a small woman, with sharp eyes and a mind that could cut through any problem like a knife through paper. She had helped Daniel through some of the most difficult moments in his career. "You look worried," Catherine said as she sat down across from him. "What happened?" Daniel turned the holographic display so she could read the message. He watched her face as she absorbed the words. Her expression did not change, but he noticed her hands tighten slightly on the arms of her chair. "So they finally noticed us," Catherine said quietly. "It seems that way." For 30 years, humanity had been expanding into space without asking anyone for permission. They had built colonies on worlds that other species had ignored. They had constructed ships and stations and mining facilities. They had done all of this while knowing that somewhere out there, ancient powers were watching. The Galactic Council had existed for longer than human civilization. They controlled thousands of star systems and commanded fleets that could darken the skies of any world. Every species that rose to challenge them had been crushed. Every civilization that refused to submit had been erased from history, and now they wanted to talk. "What do you think they want?" Catherine asked. Daniel stood and walked to the window again. The snow was falling harder now, covering the city in white. "I reviewed the historical records last night. Every species that the Council has contacted received the same offer. They call it protection, but it is really slavery. You give them your ships, your resources, your soldiers. In exchange, they allow you to exist. And if a species refuses, then they do not exist for very long." Catherine was silent for a moment. Then she asked the question that Daniel had been asking himself all morning. "What are we going to do?" Daniel turned to face her. There was something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not fear. It was not anger. It was something closer to determination, mixed with a strange kind of hope. "We are going to accept their invitation," he said. "We are going to go to their station and sit in their chamber and listen to their demands. And then we are going to do something that no species has ever done before." Catherine raised an eyebrow. "What is that?" "We are going to say no." The next few weeks were filled with preparation. Daniel assembled a team of people he trusted completely. Commander Samuel Grant was a military veteran who had fought in 3 different conflicts and survived them all. He was a quiet man who rarely smiled, but his loyalty was absolute. Dr. Elizabeth Turner was the foremost expert on alien languages and cultures. She had spent her entire career studying the few fragments of Council communications that humanity had intercepted. Lieutenant Christopher Cole was young but brilliant, a tactical analyst who had memorized every piece of intelligence they had about Council military capabilities. Together, they boarded the diplomatic vessel, Rejectin, and departed from Earth. The journey would take 3 weeks, through hyperspace corridors that the Council controlled. Daniel knew that they were being watched from the moment they left their own territory. During the journey, Daniel spent long hours reviewing everything they knew about the Council. He studied their history, their politics, their methods of negotiation. He watched recordings of previous species that had tried to resist. Most of those recordings ended badly, but Daniel also noticed something that others had missed. The council was old, very old, and old powers often became lazy. They relied on their reputation to frighten their enemies. They expected every new species to react the same way that hundreds of species had reacted before. They expected fear. They expected submission. They expected that the mere sight of their power would be enough to break human will. Daniel smiled to himself as he watched the stars blur past the ship's windows. The council did not understand humanity at all. Catherine found him in the observation deck late one night, staring at the distant lights of unknown worlds. "You should rest," she said. "The meeting is tomorrow." "I know." Daniel did not turn away from the window. "I have been thinking about something. Do you know why the council has lasted for 40,000 years? Because they destroy anyone who opposes them. No, that is what they want everyone to believe. But the truth is simpler. They have lasted because no one has ever truly challenged them. Every species they have encountered has been alone, isolated, frightened. They have never faced an enemy that refused to be afraid." Catherine stood beside him, looking at the same stars. "And you think humanity is different?" "I know we are. We have spent 30 years preparing for this moment. We have built things that the council does not know about. We have made friends that the council believes are dead. We have done all of this because we understood something that other species did not." "What is that?" Daniel finally turned to face her. In his eyes, she saw the same determination that had carried him through 20 years of impossible negotiations. That the galaxy does not belong to the strong. It belongs to those who refuse to give up. The next morning, the horizon emerged from hyperspace and approached the council's station. It was a massive structure, larger than any human city, floating in the darkness between stars. Ships from a dozen different species moved around it like insects around a hive. Daniel stood on the bridge with his team around him. Through the view screen, he could see the station growing larger as they approached. It was designed to intimidate, to make visitors feel small and helpless. Daniel did not feel small. He did not feel helpless. He felt ready. "Open a channel," he said to the communications officer. "Tell them that the human delegation has arrived." The future of humanity was about to be decided, and Daniel Harris had no intention of letting anyone else write that future for them. The docking procedure took nearly an hour. Human ships were not designed to connect with council stations. The alien engineers had to make special adjustments before the horizon could attach safely. Daniel used the time to gather his team in the main conference room for one final discussion. "Remember," he said, looking at each of them in turn, "everything they show us is designed to make us afraid. The corridors, the guards, the chamber itself, they have been using these tricks for thousands of years. Do not let them see any reaction on your faces." Commander Grant nodded slowly. He had faced enemy fire without flinching. A few alien decorations were not going to bother him. Dr. Turner adjusted her translation device and took a deep breath. Lieutenant Cole reviewed his notes one more time, memorizing the names and positions of each council member. Catherine stood beside Daniel, calm and composed as always. "Whatever happens in there," she said quietly, "we face it together." "Together," Daniel agreed. The airlock opened with a hiss of escaping air, and the human delegation stepped onto the council's station for the first time. The corridor beyond was enormous, tall enough to fit a small building and wide enough for 100 people to walk side by side. The walls were made of some kind of dark crystal that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. 2 guards waited for them. They were Druthani, massive reptilian creatures that stood 3 meters tall. Their scales were the color of dried blood, and their eyes followed the humans with cold intelligence. Each guard carried a weapon that looked like it could destroy a small vehicle with a single shot. "Follow," one of the guards said in heavily accented human language. Daniel walked forward without hesitation. His team fell into step behind him. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever. Every few meters, they passed murals carved into the crystal walls. The images showed scenes of conquest and destruction. Cities burning, ships exploding, species kneeling before council thrones. The message was clear. This is what happens to those who resist. Catherine walked beside Daniel, her eyes taking in every detail. They certainly know how to decorate, she murmured. They want us to imagine our own cities in those pictures, Daniel replied. They want us to see Earth burning. Is it working? Daniel allowed himself a small smile. Not even a little. They passed through a series of massive doors, each one larger and more impressive than the last. The guards led them through chambers filled with strange technology, and rooms were alien. Diplomats watched them pass with curious eyes. Daniel noticed that several of the watching species seemed surprised to see humans walking with such confidence. Finally, they reached the entrance to the council chamber itself. The doors were made of solid gold, or something that looked like gold, decorated with symbols from each of the 12 ruling species. 2 more guards stood at attention, and between them floated a small device that scanned the humans from head to toe. No weapons detected, the device announced. One of the guards made a sound that might have been laughter. They came unarmed. Brave or foolish, these humans. Daniel said nothing. He simply waited for the doors to open. The council chamber was the largest enclosed space Daniel had ever seen. It could have held a stadium, perhaps 2. The ceiling rose so high that it was lost in shadow, and the walls curved around in a perfect circle. In the center of the floor was a single platform where visitors were expected to stand while addressing the council around the edges of the chamber. Rising in tiers like seats in an ancient theater were the thrones of the 12 ruling species. Each throne was different, designed for the particular body of its occupant. Some were made of metal, others of crystal, others of materials that Daniel could not identify. And on those thrones sat the rulers of the galaxy. The Vorath occupied the highest position. There were insectoid creatures with hard shells and compound eyes that reflected light in 1,000 colors. Their leader, High Counselor Varric, was ancient even by Vorath standards. He had ruled for 3 centuries, and he had seen dozens of species rise and fall. Below the Vorath sat the Kelmari, beings of pure energy contained in flowing silver forms. Their ambassador, Keth, was considered the most eloquent speaker in the council. He had talked species into surrender without a single shot being fired. The Druthani occupied the military position, their massive bodies hunched on thrones built like fortresses. The Selvani were present, delicate creatures with 4 arms and skin that changed color with their emotions. The Morith, the Beacon, the Tholis, and others filled the remaining seats. 12 species, 12 empires, 40,000 years of combined history, and in the center of the chamber, standing on a platform designed to make them look like insects before giants, stood 5 humans. High Counselor Varric spoke first. His mandibles clicked together, and the translation device rendered his words in a smooth, condescending voice. So these are the humans? The species that has been expanding without permission, building without authorization, acting as if the rules of the galaxy do not apply to them. Daniel stood perfectly still. He had prepared for this moment his entire life. "We are honored by the Council's invitation," he said. His voice was steady and carried clearly through the chamber. Humanity has long wished to establish formal relations with the galactic community. Ambassador Keth of the Kelmari leaned forward, his silver form rippling with interest. "Relations are not what you are here to discuss, human. You are here to accept your place in the order of things. Every species has a place. Yours will be determined today." Daniel allowed himself to look around the chamber slowly, meeting the eyes of each council member in turn. Some looked amused. Some looked bored. None of them looked worried that would change soon. "I understand," Daniel said calmly. "Please present your terms." Varric made a gesture, and a holographic display appeared in the air above Daniel's head. It showed documents filled with dense text, charts, and diagrams. The terms of humanity's surrender, presented in careful detail. "You will reduce your fleet to 20% of its current size," Varric said. "The remaining ships will be transferred to Council control. You will provide 10,000 soldiers each year for Council military operations. You will pay tribute in raw materials equivalent to 15% of your annual production. You will cease all expansion beyond your current borders. The list continued. Mining rights, technology transfers, cultural oversight. Every aspect of human civilization would be controlled by the Council. In exchange, Varric concluded, humanity will receive the protection of the Council. You will be safe from external threats. You will be permitted to maintain your culture within approved limits. You will be allowed to exist. The chamber fell silent. Every eye was on Daniel, waiting for his response. They expected gratitude. They expected relief. They expected a species that understood how lucky it was to receive such generous terms. Daniel looked at Catherine. She gave him the smallest of nods. He turned back to face the council. "I have a few questions," he said. Varric's compound eyes flickered with what might have been surprise. "Questions are not customary at this stage." "Nevertheless," Daniel replied, "I wish to understand the terms completely before I respond." For the first time, something like uncertainty passed through the chamber. This was not how species were supposed to behave. Daniel smiled. Inwardly, this was only the beginning. The silence in the chamber stretched on for several long moments. High Counselor Varric stared down at Daniel with his thousand-faceted eyes, trying to understand what was happening. In all his centuries of dealing with younger species, he had never encountered one that asked questions at this stage of negotiations. "Very well," Varric said finally. "Ask your questions, human, but be quick. The Council's time is valuable." Daniel clasped his hands behind his back and began to pace slowly across the platform. Every eye in the chamber followed him. He could feel the weight of their attention, but it did not bother him. He had spent 20 years negotiating with difficult parties. This was simply a larger room with stranger faces. "My first question concerns the protection you mention," Daniel said. "In the past 1,000 years, how many species under Council protection have faced external threats?" Varric's mandibles clicked with irritation. "That information is not relevant to these proceedings." "I believe it is. You see, we have done our research. According to our records, no protected species has faced an external threat in over 800 years. The only conflicts in Council space have been internal ones, usually involving species that wish to change their status." Daniel paused and looked directly at Varric. "Seems that the main threat protected species face is the Council itself." A murmur rippled through the chamber. Ambassador Keth of the Kelmari rose from his throne, his silver form flickering with agitation. "You speak dangerously, human. The Council's protection is a gift beyond measure. We have maintained peace in this galaxy for 40,000 years." "You have maintained control," Daniel corrected him. "That is not the same thing as peace." Commander Grant shifted his weight slightly, ready for trouble. He had noticed the guards around the chamber tightening their grips on their weapons. But no one moved to stop Daniel from speaking. Dr. Turner leaned close to Catherine. "He is pushing them hard," she whispered. "He knows what he is doing," Catherine replied. Daniel continued his slow pacing. "My second question concerns the tribute you require. 15% of our annual production is a significant amount. What happens if a species cannot meet this demand? What happens if there is a famine, or a disaster, or simply a bad year?" This time, it was a Druthani counselor who answered. His voice was deep and rumbling, like stones grinding together. "The tribute is adjusted according to circumstances. The Council is not unreasonable." "And yet," Daniel said, "our records show that 17 species have been punished in the past. 500 years for failing to meet their tribute requirements. 3 of those species no longer exist. The others were reduced to barely surviving populations confined to single worlds." The Druthani counselor made a sound that might have been a growl. "Those species were weak. They deserved their fate, I see." Daniel stopped pacing and turned to face the Council directly. "So the protection the Council offers is conditional. If a species cannot pay, it is destroyed. If a species questions the terms, it is punished. If a species wishes to leave the arrangement, it is eliminated." High Counselor Varric leaned forward on his throne. His ancient body creaked with the movement, but his eyes were sharp and dangerous. You seem to misunderstand your position, human. You are not here to negotiate. You are not here to ask questions. You are here to accept the terms we have graciously offered. This is how things are done. This is how things have always been done. Daniel met his gaze without flinching, and that is precisely the problem. The chamber went completely silent. Even the guards seemed frozen in place. Humanity has spent 30 years preparing for this moment, Daniel said. His voice was calm, but carried to every corner of the vast room. We knew that eventually the council would notice us. We knew that eventually you would send your invitation. And we knew that we would have to make a choice. He reached into his coat and withdrew a small data crystal. It caught the light from the holographic displays and sparkled like a tiny star. This crystal contains information that I believe the council will find interesting. Before we proceed any further, I suggest you review its contents. Varric gestured to one of his aides, who floated down from the upper levels of the chamber and took the crystal from Daniel's hand. Moments later, the holographic display above Daniel's head changed. Instead of the terms of surrender, it now showed maps, diagrams, and tactical data. This is impossible, Ambassador Keth said, his silver form flickering rapidly. These are our fleet positions, our supply routes, our shipyard locations. Yes, Daniel said simply. Human intelligence operatives have been gathering this information for 2 decades. We know where your ships are. We know how they are supplied. We know their weaknesses. The Druthani counselor stood, his massive body blocking the light. This is an act of war. Guards, seize them. I would not recommend that, Daniel said, still perfectly calm. If my team does not send a signal within the next hour, this information will be transmitted to every species in the galaxy, including several that have been waiting for an opportunity to challenge council authority. The guards hesitated, looking to their leaders for guidance. The counselors were arguing among themselves in rapid alien languages that even Dr. Turner's device struggled to translate. Catherine stepped forward to stand beside Daniel. Her voice was steady as she addressed the council. You offered humanity a choice between submission and destruction. We are here to tell you that we reject both options. We will not submit to your authority, and we will not be destroyed. Lieutenant Cole activated his own device, adding more data to the holographic display. Our analysis indicates that a direct military conflict between humanity and the Council would result in significant losses on both sides. We estimate that you would lose approximately 40% of your combined fleet before achieving victory. And that estimate does not account for the defensive systems we have installed around our core worlds. High Counselor Varric raised one of his appendages, silencing the arguing counselors. His compound eyes studied the humans with new interest. You're bluffing, he said. Your species has been in space for barely 3 centuries. You cannot have developed capabilities to threaten the Council. It was not a friendly smile. That is what we wanted you to believe. He gestured, and the holographic display changed again. This time it showed images that made even the ancient counselors gasp. Human shipyards hidden in asteroid fields, invisible to Council sensors. Research stations buried beneath frozen moons. Fleets of warships that had never been registered or reported. For 30 years, Daniel said, humanity has shown the galaxy only what we wanted them to see. We have hidden our true capabilities. We have developed technologies that your scientists said were impossible. And we have done it all while you were looking elsewhere, confident that we were too small and too young to matter. The chamber erupted into chaos. Counselors shouted accusations at each other. Guards rushed back and forth, uncertain of what to do. Through it all, Daniel and his team stood calmly on their platform, waiting. Finally, Varric restored order with a commanding gesture. What do you want? He asked. His voice was different now. The condescension was gone, replaced by something closer to caution. Daniel straightened his shoulders. This was the moment everything had been building toward. I want you to understand something, he said. Humanity does not seek war. We do not want to destroy the Council. But we will not be slaves. We will not surrender our freedom. And we will not accept any terms that treat us as anything less than equals. He paused, letting his words sink in.
We reject your offer.
Completely and finally. And now we have an offer of our own. The chaos in the chamber slowly faded into an uneasy silence. The counselors stared at Daniel with expressions ranging from fury to disbelief to something that might have been fear. For 40,000 years, they had controlled every negotiation, every outcome, every future. Now, for the first time, they were facing something they did not understand. High Counselor Varek remained on his throne, his ancient body still and watchful. His compound eyes reflected Daniel's image 1,000 times over, studying the human ambassador as if seeing him for the first time. "Don't speak of an offer," Varek said slowly. "What could humanity possibly offer the council?" Daniel glanced at Catherine, who gave him a small nod. This was the moment they had planned for. This was when everything would change. "Before I explain our offer," Daniel said, "I need to share some additional information with the council. Information that will help you understand why you should listen carefully to what I have to say." He gestured to Commander Grant, who transmitted a signal through his communication device. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, throughout the chamber, view screens flickered to life on the walls. The screens showed images of space, the deep darkness between stars, far from the council's station. At first, the counselors saw nothing unusual. Then, one by one, ships began to emerge from hyperspace. Not human ships. Ships of designs that the council had not seen in centuries. "What is this?" Ambassador Keth demanded, his silver form flashing with alarm. "Those ships. Those configurations." Dr. Elizabeth Turner stepped forward, her translation device ready. "Allow me to explain. The ships you are seeing belong to species that the council believed were destroyed long ago. The Orthane Collective, whose homeworld you burned 500 years ago. The free worlds of Meridian, whose leaders you executed for resisting tribute payments. The shattered kingdoms of Voss, whose people you scattered across a dozen barren moons." The chamber erupted into noise again. Counselors were shouting at their aides, demanding explanations. Guards were moving toward the view screens as if they could somehow stop what they were seeing. Varek raised his appendage once more, commanding silence. "Explain yourself, human," he said. His voice was cold and dangerous. Daniel clasped his hands behind his back and faced the ancient counselor directly. 20 years ago, when humanity first began exploring beyond our own system, we encountered survivors of the Orthene Calais. K-Dive hiding in an asteroid field near the edge of council space. They told us their story. They warned us about what the council would do when they noticed us. He paused, letting the memories settle in his mind. That first contact had changed everything for humanity. We could have ignored them. We could have continued our expansion and hoped that the council would treat us differently. But we did not believe that would happen. The council's history was too clear. Every species that submitted was enslaved. Every species that resisted was destroyed. There was no third option. Catherine continued the explanation. So humanity created a third option. For 2 decades, we have been secretly contacting species that the council believed were finished. We found the Orthani hiding in the shadows. We found the Meridians surviving on forgotten worlds. We found the Voss rebuilding in the darkness between stars. And we helped them, Lieutenant Cole added. We shared technology. We provided resources. We gave them hope that someday they would have a chance to be free again. The view screens showed more ships emerging from hyperspace. Hundreds of them now, forming a fleet that grew larger with each passing moment. It was not enough to defeat the Council in open war. It was enough to make any victory extremely costly. The Druthani counselor slammed his massive fist against his throne. "This is treason against the Galactic Order. You have allied yourselves with criminals and rebels. You will be destroyed along with them. Perhaps," Daniel said calmly, "or perhaps you will listen to what we have to say." He walked to the edge of the platform, bringing himself as close to the council thrones as he could. For 40,000 years, the council has ruled through fear. You have destroyed anyone who challenged you. You have crushed any species that dreamed of freedom. You have kept the galaxy in a state of permanent stagnation. Preserving your power at the cost of all progress, his voice grew stronger, carrying clearly through the chamber. But fear only works as long as the victims believe they have no choice. The moment someone stands up and refuses to be afraid, the entire system begins to crack. That is what humanity is offering you today. Not a military challenge? Not a war. A choice. Ambassador Keth floated down from his throne, his silver form shifting through colors that suggested deep contemplation. Unlike many of his fellow counselors, he seemed to be actually listening. What choice do you imagine you can offer us? Keth asked. Daniel turned to face him. The choice to change. The choice to build a galaxy based on cooperation instead of conquest. The choice to share power instead of hoarding it. He gestured to the view screens, where the Allied fleet continued to hold position. Those species you see out there, the ones you believed were destroyed, they do not want revenge. They do not want to burn your worlds the way you burned theirs. They want what every species wants. A chance to live freely. A chance to determine their own future. A chance to matter. Varric made a sound that might have been laughter. You expect us to simply surrender our authority? To give up 40,000 years of tradition because a young species asked nicely? No, Daniel said. I expect you to recognize reality. The reality is that you can fight us. You might even win. But the cost will be enormous. You will lose ships, soldiers, resources. You will spend centuries rebuilding. And during that time, other species will rise. Other challenges will emerge. The galaxy will not wait for you to recover. He let that sink in before continuing, or you can accept a new arrangement. One where the council still exists, but as a body of equals rather than masters. One where every species has a voice. One where tribute is replaced with trade and protection is offered freely rather than sold. The counselors conferred among themselves in private channels that the humans could not access. Daniel waited patiently. He had said everything he needed to say. Now the decision was in their hands. Dr. Turner moved closer to Daniel. Do you think they will accept? She whispered. I do not know, Daniel admitted. But I know that we have shown them something they have never seen before. We have shown them that the future is not fixed, that things can change. After what seemed like hours, Varric rose from his throne. Despite his ancient age, he moved with surprising grace as he descended to the chamber floor. For the first time, he stood at the same level as the human delegation. You have given us much to consider, he said. His voice was different now, stripped of its earlier arrogance. The council requires time to deliberate. Daniel nodded. We understand. But I must tell you that our fleet will remain in position until we have your answer. And if anything happens to us while we wait, our allies have been instructed to share everything they know with every species in the galaxy. Varric studied him for a long moment. You planned this very carefully, human. We had to. We were facing an enemy that had never lost. The only way to survive was to change the rules of the game entirely. For just a moment, something flickered in Varric's compound eyes. It might have been respect. The council will give you an answer by morning, he said. Until then, you will remain as our guests. Guests, not prisoners. Daniel noticed the careful word choice. We accept your hospitality, he said, as the guards escorted the human delegation from the chamber. Daniel allowed himself to feel a small measure of hope. They had not won yet. The council could still choose war. But for the first time in 40,000 years, someone had stood before them and refused to kneel. Whatever happened next, the galaxy would never be the same. The waiting room they were given was comfortable enough, with soft furniture designed to accommodate human bodies and windows that looked out into the endless darkness of space. Food was provided, though none of the human delegation ate much. They were all too tense, too aware that the next few hours would determine the fate of their entire species. Daniel stood at the window, watching the distant lights of the Allied Fleet H. Alding position. Those ships represented everything humanity had worked for over the past 20 years. Every secret meeting, every hidden resource transfer, every whispered promise of hope. If the Council chose war, many of those lights would go dark forever. Catherine joined him at the window. You should try to rest. Whatever their answer, we will need to be sharp when we hear it. I cannot sleep, Daniel admitted. I keep thinking about all the ways this could go wrong, and all the ways it could go right. Daniel smiled slightly. Those two. Commander Grant sat in a corner, cleaning a weapon he had somehow hidden from the security scanners. When Catherine raised an eyebrow at him, he shrugged. Old habits. Besides, I never fully trust anyone who says I am a guest. Dr. Turner was reviewing her notes, adding new observations about council body language and communication patterns. Lieutenant Cole had fallen asleep almost immediately, a skill he had learned during his military training. Rest when you can, because you never know when you will get another chance. The hours passed slowly. Outside the window, the stars continued their eternal dance. Unconcerned with the small dramas of mortal species, when the summons finally came, it was nearly dawn by the station's artificial clock. A guard appeared at their door, his expression unreadable. The council has reached a decision, he said. You are requested in the chamber. Daniel straightened his coat and nodded to his team. Let us go hear what the future holds. The walk back to the chamber felt longer than before. Daniel noticed that the guards treated them differently now. There was no more casual contempt in their eyes. Instead, they watched the humans with something closer to caution, perhaps even respect. The chamber itself was changed. The harsh lighting had been softened, and the holographic displays now showed neutral images rather than scenes of conquest. Small changes, but meaningful ones. The 12 counselors sat on their thrones as before, but their postures were different. They no longer lounged with the lazy confidence of absolute rulers. They sat straight, attentive, watching the human delegation with careful interest. High Counselor. Varric rose from his throne and descended once more to the chamber floor. This time, he was joined by Ambassador Keth and 3 other counselors, representing the major powers of the council. They formed a line facing the human delegation. Equals meeting, equals. We have deliberated through the night, Varric said. His voice was quiet, almost thoughtful. Your words forced us to confront truths we have been avoiding for a very long time. Daniel waited, his heart beating faster than he would have liked. For 40,000 years, the Council has maintained order through strength and fear. We told ourselves that this was necessary, that the galaxy would collapse into chaos without our firm control, that the species we conquered should be grateful for our protection. Varric paused, his compound eyes reflecting the soft light of the chamber. But you have shown us the truth of what we created. Not gratitude. Not loyalty. Only resentment, waiting for its chance to emerge. The species we believed were destroyed were merely hiding, gathering strength, hoping for someone to give them a chance to fight back. Ambassador Keth spoke next, his silver form glowing steadily. We face a choice now. We can fight to maintain the old order, spending countless lives and resources on a war that will weaken us even in victory. Or we can accept that the galaxy has changed, and change with it. Daniel allowed himself to breathe. This sounded promising. The Council has decided, Varric continued, to accept your proposal for negotiation. We will discuss terms for a new arrangement. One where humanity and the other allied species are recognized as equals. One where tribute is replaced with voluntary trade. One where membership in the Council is offered freely rather than imposed by force. Catherine stepped forward, her voice steady. And the species you conquered? What happens to them? They will be given the choice to remain, to leave, or to change their status, Keth replied. It will take time to undo what we have built over 40,000 years, but we are prepared to begin. Daniel looked at his team, seeing the same mixture of relief and disbelief on their faces. They had done it. Against all odds, they had actually done it. We accept your offer to negotiate, Daniel said. Humanity is committed to building a better galaxy. We hope that this is the beginning of a new era for all species. Varric extended one of his appendages in a gesture that roughly corresponded to a human handshake. Daniel took it, feeling the strange texture of alien skin against his own. You have done something remarkable, human, Varric said quietly, so only Daniel could hear. You have proven that courage and preparation can overcome even the oldest powers. I find myself wondering what else your species might accomplish. We are just getting started, Daniel replied. The formal negotiations took 3 months. Teams of diplomats from dozens of species gathered on a neutral station to hammer out the details of the new arrangement. There were arguments, disagreements, moments when the whole process seemed ready to collapse. But in the end, The Treaty of Seoul was signed by representatives of 42 species, the largest diplomatic agreement in galactic history. Catherine led the human negotiating team, bringing her sharp mind and patient determination to every session. Commander Grant oversaw security, making sure that no one tried to sabotage the process. Dr. Turner served as chief translator, helping species that had never communicated before find common ground. Lieutenant Cole analyzed every proposal, ensuring that humanity's interests were protected, and Daniel watched it all unfold. The dream he had barely allowed himself to imagine becoming reality. On the day the treaty was signed, humanity hosted a celebration on a station orbiting Earth. Ships from species across the galaxy formed an honor guard around the blue planet, their weapons powered down for the first time in living memory. Daniel stood on the observation deck, looking out at the fleet. Catherine stood beside him, her eyes bright with unshed tears. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it, not just us," Daniel replied. "All of them. Every species that refused to give up hope. Every ally who trusted us when they had every reason not to. Every human who worked in secret, knowing they might never see the results of their efforts." He thought about the Orthani survivors they had found hiding in that asteroid field 20 years ago. He thought about the Meridians who had lost everything but kept fighting anyway. He thought about all the species across the galaxy who had been told for 40,000 years that resistance was impossible. "The Council asked me something back in that first meeting," Daniel said. "They asked what humanity could possibly offer them. I told them we offered a choice, a chance to change." Catherine nodded. "And they took it. Because we showed them that change was possible, that the future is not written by the powerful. It is written by those who refuse to accept that things cannot be different." A message came through on Daniel's communication device. The first official meeting of the new Galactic Assembly was scheduled to begin in 1 hour. Representatives from every member species would have an equal voice, an equal vote. A new chapter in galactic history was about to begin. Daniel looked at the stars one more time. Out there, across a galaxy that had known only fear and submission for thousands of years, billions of beings were waking up to a new reality. A reality where they mattered, where their voices would be heard, where the future belonged to everyone. It had started with 5 humans standing in a chamber designed to make them feel small. Refusing to be afraid, it would end with a galaxy transformed. "Come on," Daniel said, turning away from the window. "We have work to do." Catherine smiled. "The galaxy is not going to save itself." No, Daniel agreed. "But for the first time in 40,000 years, it has the chance to try." Together, they walked toward the future they had fought so hard to create.